Good afternoon, members, officers, members of the public, and anybody listening online. Welcome to the meeting of the Development Control and Regulatory Board. This is a public meeting and is being broadcast via YouTube. Could I remind members to turn their microphones on when speaking and turn them off when they have finished. We are not expecting a fire alarm, but if the alarm does go off, please exit the committee rooms via the door you came in, turn right and go through the double doors, down the flight of stairs, which leads to the two fire exits. For the record, we have Mrs. Fryer here, substituting for Mr. Grimley, and we have apologies from Mr. Gamble. Right. Okay, we'll move straight on to the agenda then, members. Agenda item 1 is minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of February 2025. I propose that the minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of October 2024 are taken as read, confirmed and signed. All in agreement? Thank you, members. Agenda item 2 is question time. I have not received any questions from the public. Excuse me. Agenda item 3 is questions asked by members under Standing Order 7.3 and 7.5. I have not received any questions from members. Agenda item 4, to advise that any other items which the chairman has decided to take as urgent elsewhere on the agenda. There are no urgent items. Agenda item 5, declarations of interest in respect of any items on the agenda. Are there any? It is noted that members of district councils, boroughs, committees have a interest that we are aware of. For myself, in relation to agenda item 9, I am a district ward councillor in Blaby District Council and a member of the Cabinet Executive. That is purely for the record. It's non-pecuniary and non-registrable nowadays. Any other interest to declare, members? No, thank you very much. Agenda item 6 is presentation of petitions under Standing Order 36. I have not received any petitions. We then move on to the reports of the Director of Environment and Transport on public rights of way. Agenda item 7, application under section 53 of the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981, I beg your pardon, to add a public footpath to the definitive map at Nanpantan, Loughborough, pages 7 to 164 in your agenda pack. This report will be presented by Edwin McWilliam, Access Manager, Environmental and Transport Department. Edwin, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm sure members are aware of this particular report because it's fairly lengthy. There's also a range of appendices to be dealt with as well. I'm only going to summarise the report today. Obviously, we'll then be opening up for questions as well thereafter. But as I go through, there are various appendices that I might refer to alongside the actual report itself. Now, the report is in relation to seeking the determination of an application under Section 53 of the Wildlife and Countryside Act, and that's to add a footpath to definitive map and statement as shown on Appendix A and shown on the screen in front of you there. Under the proposal, the footpath will be added to the definitive map on the route as shown on the plan. The points shown on there are A, B, C, D, E and A. The recommendation, which I'll be coming back to later, is that an order be made under the provisions of the Act to add a footpath, which will be given the number K110 if it is added at Nanpantan to the definitive map as shown on the plan number M1269 appended to the report. And the reason for that recommendation is the application satisfies the relevant statutory criteria that the evidence shows that a right-of-way subsists or is reasonably alleged to subsist. The application was brought by Barbara Singer of Tynedale Road, Loughborough, to add the route, and the applicant was made after the area of land concerned, which is really the parcel of land you see in front of you with a path running through it, the white area, that is also subject to, and I believe has received outline planning permission for housing. The application claims that a highway has come into being based on alleged use of the route by members of the public over a period of time and without challenge. namely for at least 20 years. There were 55 user evidence forms that were submitted as part of the application, and the stated usage of the path spans between 1971 and 21. So the evidence periods as a whole covered a period of approximately 50 years. In broad terms, it's unusual to have that many user evidence forms. We have seen more, but we've seen a lot less in most types of cases of this nature. Now, there's a site survey carried out, and let me first of all just flick over to the user evidence forms. That's actually just showing year by year, going back to the present days on the far right-hand side, going onto the far left-hand side, you are seeing when the user claimed to first use the route. The route itself is currently, and these photos are taken about a year ago, April last year. The route's still being used at that stage. You can see it's fairly well used. I think it's fair to say that in terms of the circular route you see on the plan in front of you, the more popular section of the path is the right-hand side, I suspect, because some users, while some will be doing a loop in the field, other users will be heading towards the woodland and that area on that side. And as you see, there's a clearly defined trail walking around the claimed route last year. And sorry, that one's not really coming across very well, but we'll come back to that anyway. Now, our obligations are set out in Section 53 of the Wildlife and Countryside Act. We're required to update the definitive map, which we manage, which is a legal record of all footpaths, bridleways, byways and restricted byways in the county. And if it's brought to our attention that a route should be shown on the definitive map, which isn't currently shown on the definitive map, thank you, then we are obliged to actually investigate that issue, and that's what we're here today to consider, and the application alongside it. The actual determination of whether we think a highway has come into being, because that's what we are looking at, the claim is that over a period of time, users have used this as of right, i.e. they thought they could use it, they were going to be unchallenged, and that they were using a route which could be, I should stress this point, could be defined, i.e. we're not in any way discussing people walking over the field willy-nilly or from here, from there. We're talking about a route which is defined on the ground or in the user's mind, that they have used that for a period of time, at least exceeding 20 years. And of course, bearing in mind, it is a question of judgment, how many people are claiming that, and over what period of time before we come to a particular conclusion. Now, really, the legislation suggests two items. One, which is euphemistically termed Test A, and that's where we might consider we've received an application. We think the evidence is so good and so overwhelming, we really feel that a route does exist on the ground, and we're really sure about that and should proceed. Test B is a little less, and that's where we have received evidence, and there is evidence on one side, there is evidence on another side, and that having actually looked at that evidence, we have, and I'm using this awkward word, which I'm sure Lisa can explain at some point, reasonable or reasonability in terms of whether or not we think a path does subsist or not. What we're here today to do is to actually decide whether a path has come into existence. We're not seeking to create a route, we're not seeking to create something new. We're simply seeking whether, in terms of this application, whether it is right that the allegation that a path or a highway has come into existence at this point is true or not. Now, Section 31 of the Highways Act really underlies the point of that in order to, these are generalities, they are set down in law as well, but they are still generalities. It's expected that a period of 20 years be subject to the usage of the paths concerned, and that to be clear in our minds that that was in fact the case. You recall when we looked at the previous photograph, the list of user evidence forms, according to the user evidence forms, I stress that there's clearly been a path in use according to the claims, and those claims had a plan attached to them defining the route that was subject to claim. So we really are, again, looking at uninterrupted use. Looking at the actual user evidence in terms of what has been submitted, the application was supported by 55 user evidence forms, and a summary of which is attached as Appendix D. The route claimed and all the witnesses signed a plan attached to their user evidence forms indicating they've used the route which is subject to a claim, and the plan appears to have been supplied to the witnesses from a single source. So in other words, the plan that was attached to the claim forms was clearly the same plan used by all the parties, who then signed up to say, yes, that is the route that I have used since X to Y. And that is how the use has come into question. Now, I should say that the route has also, whilst we've got all those user evidence forms, the route has also been brought into question by the occupier, who has raised a few points. One issue which has been raised is that the actual paths itself and the users on them have been subject to occasional challenge by people actually managing the land in terms. And indeed, there are statutory declarations from three parties saying just that in Appendix H, I, and J. In addition to that, the statutory declarations also underline the fact that the occupier did seek to put a notices in place, and it's not clear about notices, but one of the statutory declarations is quite clear, and that was done at an earlier date, and there is one of the user forms which does agree with that date in terms of the date being used. I think that was, remind me, that's 2020. That was 2020. That was a sign that went up that not just reiterated that it was private land, it also stated that there wasn't a path there as well. Those statute declarations that have been submitted to us also outline and point out that whilst managing the site, there has been livestock on this site, I should add, whilst managing the site, that those parties have also, from time to time, challenged users from using the route, and that's not just a one-off, but on a number of occasions. Now, hereby hangs a bit of a query on that one, because there is, on that one particular issue, there is a clear divergence between the statutory declarations of the people concerned and indeed other advice submitted to us via the agent and the various parties, and of course the users. The users actually don't make mention of being challenged in terms of that, and I believe we've got a standard question on that, haven't we? Yeah, we've got a standard question asked with people to change. So I ask you all to bear in mind that there is a divergence at that point between the evidence bases of the parties concerned. Now, if I can just go on to the, I'm not sure how these will turn out because these are aerial shots. Thanks for turning the lights down, by the way. This makes life a lot easier. Yeah, we're looking right back at the year 2000 now. So, crikey, that's some time, even for us, a good 25 years ago. This is, although we have aerial shots prior to this, they don't show very well any particular routes being used. The houses you see surrounding the field, the estate, I believe, was finished in the early 70s or being constructed in the early 70s. I suspect usage of the field has occurred since that date. And on this particular map, you can see, I would say, the best line, if you can see it, the north, I'm saying north-south, but it's in a northeasterly direction, of the route, which currently today is also a bit wide. If you look carefully, I stress carefully, you can see two other routes actually. There's the route through the middle there, which is very similar to the one that's claimed, but there's also a route to the south, which actually appears slightly stronger in the year 2000, where people were also walking. Move on to 2011, things are a little bit clearer. I should say this is a field that has been, over the years, maintained not just for livestock, but also there's hay and silage taken off it as well. So it gets cuts from time to time. That makes a tremendous difference in terms of the aerial photographs that we have to hand, because obviously they look very different between cuts and when a path is cut and not. As you can see there again, very clear line of that south to northeast first section. The second route is there, and you can also see at the south a route that's being used by the public which skirts the southern boundary of the field there. This is the most recent one. Sadly, it doesn't look great, this one, but ironically on this one, the route on the eastern side looks stronger than the route on the western side, but actually they're both there if you have a close look if you have a close look close to hand. I should add the other aspect about the statute declarations is that the parties who submitted statute declarations were effectively working the land concerned. So obviously they had an intimate knowledge of the land, just as you can say the people actually using the paths had an intimate knowledge of the land concerned. Okay, so what can we actually summarise as regards those? I think the issue is, firstly, have people been using the routes as shown on the plans and as shown on the written statements of the parties claiming that they have used them? First of all, I think that's undoubtedly true. It's not just true in the short term, it's true in the longer term. Have they been using the paths in an uninterrupted way? There are a number of people who have been using the paths in an uninterrupted way for a period exceeding 20 years, even if you include the other matters concerned. And I would say in terms of the evidence is pretty good in terms of usual evidence, which we should deal with in terms of claims of this case. I should add that we are still in that situation where we have to broker that situation with, do you want to go back to the chart a minute? Again, going back to the chart, we're discounting the last 3 years, well, 4 years, in fact, of the claims, because we accept, even though it's only one of the witnesses who says they've seen a sign, they did see a sign. A sign was clearly there from a witness, and a sign was clearly put up in terms of the submission from the occupier. But there is a wide range of users who you can date back to 20 years to do that. So I think in broad terms, the actual use of the routes, and I will separate the two routes. The route of the eastern side, as we look, is fairly clear. The route of the western side, there is photographic evidence, as well as all the claims saying it, of that being in existence over a period of 20 years. However, I come back to this issue that there were these statutory declarations and the occupier is not in agreement with what the version of those other parties were. So accordingly, I think whilst the recommendation still stands that we should agree to make an order, which I should stress, should we make an order, this would then be advertised, this would be made order, be a legal order, that would then be advertised and would be open to objection from any parties, that would be including the landowner concerned. I don't believe that the evidence meets test A. i.e. that we're absolutely sure we've seen this evidence in front of us and we have little or no doubts that there's a highway that subsists. And that is why we have suggested that really we're all dealing with in all reasonability, both with the evidence in front of us, we've chosen to say that yes, we'd like to make an order, but it comes from test B, i.e. that we believe, this is reasonable to believe, that a path has come into existence. I think that's it from me for the time being. I'll throw it open, Chair.
Thank you, Edwin. We'll take the public speaking first, if I may. So, members, you have additional photographs in your agenda pack, as you can see. So we do have 3 speakers, and so I could invite Nikki Beers, who is an objector on behalf of the landowners. So, Nikki, if you'd like to take a seat. And when you're ready, if you press the button, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak, and Ewan will give you a 30-second countdown at the end. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Nikki Beers, and I'm a consultant for Baybridge Homes. And in that role, I represent the Helen Jean Cope charity as owners of the field at Leconfield Road, Nampanton. A copy of my email to the case officer dated 27th of March 2025 and the case officer's resultant supplementary report have been circulated to the committee. If you have not done so already, I would urge you to read these documents in full before making your decision. You will appreciate the importance that this application is considered carefully and objectively, given that it will have potential consequences of significantly reducing the number of plots which can be constructed on a consented site, therefore not making the best and most efficient use of land and reducing the site's contribution to 5-year supply. The officer has noted the potential to appeal any decision and to apply for a diversion to the right-of-way. But both of these options will be costly and create further unnecessary delay, potentially of several years. Better by far that the application is considered properly and the correct decision made in the first instance. You will also note that from the plan at Appendix A to the supplementary report, that the layout of the proposed development easily allows for a path between the Leconfield Road entrance through the site along a very similar route to part of the path being claimed. You will note the officer's comment in paragraph 7 of the supplementary report that the application in front of you must be considered on its merits and that the proposal for an alternative route cannot impact on that. This is entirely correct. However, should you, having considered all the evidence objectively, have doubts as to the validity of the claim before you, you can take comfort in knowing that you will not be depriving the public of the enjoyment of a route through the site, as that will be available to them in any event. The most important point raised in my email concerns the need for the route claimed to be over a defined and certain route, without fluctuation over time, through the entire 20-year period claimed, which here is from June 2000 until June 2020. This applies to the whole route of the path being claimed, not just sections of it. In my opinion, the user statements cannot be relied on in this regard, as they have all attached exactly the same photocopied plan to their submissions, clearly to ensure that the plans are all exactly the same, even though their written descriptions often vary. The application was made under the auspices of a well-orchestrated action group objecting to the planning application. The aerial photographs are therefore of more accurate use, as they objectively show the route of tracks over time. The officer's report acknowledges at paragraphs 38 and 39 that the section of the route CBA does not appear on the aerial photographs before 2011. In addition to the photograph from 2000 that was shown on the screen, there are further photographs through the period up to 2011 that also do not show that section of route. Paragraphs 38 and 39 represent the facts, and you can see this for yourselves on those aerial photographs. The fact is that the whole route did not appear on aerial photographs before 2011, and therefore it only existed for 9 of the 20 years being claimed. In summary, given that firstly a different route was claimed on a previous application submitted in 2000, which was the beginning of the time frame of this current application, and that 2000 route did not include 3/4 of the path now being claimed, including the section CBA. Secondly, no gate existed at the Leconfield Road entrance before 2008, and you have the evidence in your pack of the planning application and invoices for the construction of that gate. And you can see on the aerial photographs that there is a thick hedge through that section on the earlier aerial photographs. And that would have necessitated access by force. And thirdly, the route CBA from the Leconfield Road entrance did not appear on those aerial photographs before 2011. And so therefore it appears extremely unlikely that the whole of the route being claimed was used, whether with or without force, before 2008 at the earliest. And therefore the application fails to meet the test of demonstrating 20 years continuous use over the same clearly defined path. On the basis of all the evidence, we would therefore suggest that the DMMO application should be dismissed. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. If you just wait there for a moment, just in case members have any questions. Mr. Lovegrove.
Thank you, Chairman. For my clarification, really, from the photos that we have in front of us within the pack of information and the presentation that was given, I was led to believe that the field was used for agricultural purposes. From the photos I've seen, the field doesn't seem to have been managed or grazed or hay or silage taken off it, with the area of scrubland and the bushes that have grown. I just wanted to know whether you got any evidence of the field being used for agricultural purposes over the last 20 years.
It certainly has been. It's been let to agricultural tenants, and I think even in the user statements, you'll see reference to there being cattle in the field at times.
Supplementary, it might have been rented out to a tenant, but I would still maintain that it hasn't been used by the tenant.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Well, the user statements do confirm that there's been cattle in the field over that period, and we would have, over that length of time, we would have expected the field to revert to scrub if it hadn't been raised or managed. And yes, there are areas of scrub around the periphery, but the majority of the site is grassland still.
Thank you. Any other questions from members? No, thank you, Nikki. If you can return to the public gallery. Next member of the public speaking is the local ward member, Councillor Margaret Smidowich. Thank you. I'm guessing you know the procedure. Yeah, 5 minutes and 5 minutes and you're going to give you a 30-second countdown. So the floor is yours.
Am I on? Good afternoon, members. Thank you for allowing us to speak and for the comprehensive information provided. I was elected as the Borough Councillor for the ward in 2011 and the Planning Committee at that time, and later put on Cabinet when the Leconfield was added purely to meet the demands of the local plan. I objected then for the same reasons the application was refused in 1988 and in 2023. I totally support the application before you today. I have no doubt that adequate evidence for both Test A and Test B is met. In my earlier correspondence to Samantha Ierson at LCC, I submitted 6 Google photographs. The very first showed the dates of 1999, with the tracks clearly visible then. So far longer than 20 years, nearer probably 50. I do not live in the ward, but my interest goes back to 1969, when as a mature student I studied the local economic history involving the canal, rail track and farming contribution that was made from the area. We had friends in the ward, and my children with their fathers used to fly kites from the top of the Precambrian rock, the centre of the field, and we visited the Bluebell Wood, the ancient wood, frequently. We used a track near what is now Nicholson Road. Depending on where you lived and the purpose for the visit, you used an unhindered route. Leconfield, until recently, was farmed by 3 generations of the same family, until his acreage was reduced and then subleased to another farmer, who initially used the track accessible from what is now Nicholson Road and was used daily to take the children to nursery school on Nampanton Road, the track merged with the Ordnance Survey map route through the farm, which was then the Tudor farm. The Leconfield Gate access emerged following an oak tree conveniently catching fire and cut down in 2007. A condition was imposed by CBC to plant another. That was ignored by the trust and the tenants. In 2008, the new tenant farmer applied for access for his tractor to load and turn, rather than use the Nicholson route, which is now overgrown. I visited the site again in 2015, when CBC received an application for a self-build property right next to the gate. The entrance on Leconfield. The entrance looks very different now. I requested TPOs to be added to the remaining oak trees and hedgerows. I do not recall any sign on any locked gate. Had the tree not been felled, we would probably not be here today. I have friends who are farmers, and their comment is, unpadlocked gates are for keeping cattle in, not for keeping walkers out. Recently, the planning inspector imposed 17 conditions which will be carefully monitored. So until 2020, I have never seen any prohibition signs or deterrents, but I haven't walked the full routes. In fact, members of the public have always accessed the field without let or hindrance. The pathways were in frequent use. The Ramblers group used the route to go across to the outwards, and local walkers and those who simply walked to see the outstanding view reaching across the Loughborough town. A distance not interrupted at all. And the ancient wood is now managed by the university, so it's great. You know, we have difficulty getting to that one, except by the Nicholson route. We take exception to the comment by Ruth Stockley on the 9th of November 2023 that this is a further attempt to have some form of footpath added, no doubt motivated by the proposed development. We simply want what we've always had in that area and used. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. If you just stay seated for a moment. Members, any questions? Mr. Lovegrove.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Very interesting to hear. It's obviously private property, so in any period up until it's a designated footpath, if it ever was, anybody that was using it would be technically trespassing?
We never saw it as trespass. I think the original deeds, and I'm willing to be corrected here, were left to the people of Loughborough. And I believe the trust deeds were changed at some stage, but I don't have any detailed knowledge.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Councillor. If you return to the public gallery. And our final speaker then is Mr. Andy Travis, who's the local resident and replacing a Barbara Singer. Mr. Travis, take a seat, and I would say press the button, but it's already on for you. So
It's already on.
yeah,
Margaret.
You will have 5 minutes, and you will give you a 30-second countdown. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody for inviting us, and especially Ewan, who I'm not familiar with this sort of thing at all, but he did make the process easier. He's a good chap. As far as I can tell.
Need to minute that one.
As far as I can tell. Just a few extra points, I think. A number of our residents are the original owners from 1971 and have accessed the land since then. Our ward, despite being on the edge of Loughborough, on the outskirts really, has, according to Charnwood Borough Council's open space strategy, the least open space in Charnwood. So it's no wonder that the residents have accessed the field in large numbers over 50 years. I think we ought to correct the idea of it being a field. We all imagine fields and flat and all the rest of it. It's rough, it's rocky, it's scrubby, it's delightful to go over, but it is certainly not what most of you might be feeling as an agricultural field. Obviously, hill farmers can farm anywhere, but it's a rough piece of land. Just quickly talk about TES A and B, because as far as I could see in my rough reading of it, as we've been told, they're the key things, and that's really all we're trying to do. And I think obviously test A, the balance of probabilities that the waiver of land has been enjoyed without interruption for over 20 years. Well, 55 submissions surely completely passes that. I must point out there would have been more. I didn't make a submission. I mean, we're all busy people, and it passed me by. I live in the centre of the ward, not close to the field. And, I mean, I am on the committee of the residents group, well, not an association, but we're a loose group, and we had 60 odd members recently to our open meeting about various issues. And, it is obvious that the group that was formed to challenge the housing would also be the ones to push out to nudge people into giving evidence. So there's nothing weird about that at all, except me and many other people didn't see it. I remember running my dog from the 1980s from the centre of our ward. Well, actually, it was even further down then, down Forest Road. Before work, I'd run the dog up. I'd take what's called the Nicholson route, and I'd run around the field, the entire perimeter, which is what's there. I mean, it might not show on some photos, but it was there, and then go back and go to work. Sometimes I would do the same thing, but carry on. You could get through to the nursery lane, and then I could carry on to run around the reservoir, or carry on into Charnwood Forest. I was a fell runner, a mountain runner. So I used it personally from the early 1980s with no problem whatsoever. In fact, that submission talking about the year 2000, there was another one. I hadn't seen that till I started looking into this. Well, personally, I'd like that as well, because that was the route I took from the so-called Nicholson route that the farmers used. I would use that, go in through the field or around the field, and then carry on. So I use that regularly from the early 1980s. At test B, the bar seems even lower there. A reasonable person conclude there's a reasonable case that a right-of-way exists. Well, I have to say, I think, and I'm biased, it seems very reasonable to me, given the overwhelming weight of evidence for those residents that did supply information. There were plenty of others that you chat to. Oh yeah, didn't know about that, or didn't get round to supplying, but they all say the same thing. So we think that test is easily passed as well. Now, the points of objection. One is that two farms claim to have challenged walkers. Well, I never was. But test B requires that the landowner's actions must be open and obvious to anyone who might use the way. However, our survey and anecdotal evidence give no evidence of these challenges. In fact, one resident told me recently when I was chatting around that he met, I think it's Mr. Bailey on the field, met him and chatted to him about whether haymaking was profitable or not. It was never challenged. Access, well, one of our elderly residents said, well, the gate was a bit stiff sometimes, but otherwise no problem.
Thank you, Mr. Travis.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, Mr. Travis, you just stay there for 1 second, please.
Yes, of course.
Any member questions? No, thank you, Mr. Travis.
Thank you.
Down for public gallery. Okay, members, the debating floor is yours. Any questions? Mr. Charlesworth.
Thank you, Chair. There seems to have been some confusion about how well the field was used in an agricultural sense. I accept from the photos that the silage has been cut there frequently. That's obvious, you can see it. But is there any evidence of cows being in that field, as has been suggested by the objector? Because if there were cows in that field, the field would have to be secure, and a lot of people wouldn't walk in a field full of cows.
Edwin, one for you.
Oh, you're doing it the wrong way around. Sorry, folks. According to both user evidence, but also in terms of the information provided by the occupier of the land, there have been cows in the field, and that does seem to be the case, albeit not in the recent past. As regards the hay and silage, that has gone on past that stage to a later stage. I honestly don't know what's currently happening or whether it's just been left fallow now. I just couldn't answer that for you.
Mr. Harrison?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, it's been absolutely a wonderful document to read. The involvement of it and the whole thing, blimey, it's like a little novel. But anyway, the reality is we are here today trying to look at this. I've always been a big, strong supporter of rights of way and access for pedestrians, people, particularly in the countryside. It's important. I then learnt about the topography of the land, so it's not straight. There's slopes and all sorts going on. And I wondered originally when I looked at that whether the A to D, AED, was quick. But if there was any animals down there, maybe you'd switch to a higher level. I don't know whether that's the correct topography or not. But regardless of all that, I think there is overwhelming evidence that this has been a footpath used for many years, and I would think it would be within the consistency of what would be required to do it. So I haven't heard anything that's changed my mind and thought, having read it properly and looked at it carefully, because you don't want to just sort of make a quick decision if it's unfair or not appropriate. But I just think this is appropriate and it's fair, and I think the evidence is very substantial. So I would be happy to move that, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Noted. Just
Second that.
thank you, Mr. Walker. Members, Mr. Mary.
Thank you, Chair. Again, a very extensive report. Thank you to the officers, and I've gone through the evidence with great detail. And can I just confirm and get the officers to clarify that if the decision goes in favour today of the officers' recommendations, it will not, today's decision will not determine the route of any footpath? Can I just confirm that first, please?
Edwin?
Yeah, just to say that the next stage in the process, should members agree to the recommendation, would be for the County Council to formally make an order to add it to the definitive map. At that stage, there is a consultation period in which objections can be made. Should any objections be submitted, that would then be passed through to the Planning Inspectorate to make a decision at a later stage, probably at a public inquiry.
And my second point, Chair, is it's more of a comment, really. I just get a bit concerned when you have 55 or however many it was applications all with the same map, which tends to show that there's some kind of community involvement, which I'm not against. But for all of them 55 who say they regularly use that area, not to have seen the photographs on page 161 of the report saying private property, no public right of way, and for them signs to be taken down very, very quickly, it saddens me, because it can only be being taken down by the people who use the footpath. That's all I'd like to say, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Merritt. Any other members' questions? No? Right. We have a recommendation from the officer that the order be made under the provisions of Section 53 of the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981 to add public footpath K110 at Nampantan. We have a proposer and a seconder. So can I take a vote? I was in favour. Yes. So thank you, members. That was unanimous. So the order shall be made, Edwin, and I'll leave the rest in your capable hands for footpath K110 at Nampantan to be made. So thank you, members. Thank you, speakers. We now move on to the next agenda item. Agenda item 8. Application 2019-235. Lots of suffixes. 8/07 2019 CM and a few other suffixes. Tarmac Aggregates Limited, extraction of sand and gravel, relocation of a conveyor and bridge, use of existing processing plant and ancillary facilities, importation, of inert restoration materials and with restoration to agricultural nature conservation at Lockington Quarry, Warren Lane, Lockington. The report is going to be presented by Victoria Webb, and it is in your agenda pack pages 165 to 262. Victoria.
Thank you, Chair. So this proposal is for the extraction of sand and gravel, relocation of conveyor and bridge, use of processing plant and ancillary facilities, importation of inert restoration materials with restoration to agriculture and nature conservation on land at Lockington Quarry, Warren Lane, Lockington. This slide illustrates the application area for the proposed development as outlined by the red line. And apologies, they're probably quite difficult to see. So, Ewan, I don't know whether you'd be able to turn the lights down a little bit. The application area is approximately 132 hectares and spans the existing Lockington Quarry plant site area, a proposed northern extension area, and a proposed conveyor haul route corridor. So just in terms of where these are, this is the existing plant site down here. This is the proposed haul route corridor, and this is the extent up here of the northern extension area. The Lockington Quarry complex currently comprises the eastern extension area, which is to the east of Warren Lane and south of Ratcliffe Lane, and the existing plant site, which is to the west of Warren Lane. The site is located immediately east and adjacent to junction 24A of the M1 motorway and to the north of the A50 trunk road. Access to the site is via a dedicated road directly off the A50. The site exit, again via a dedicated access, a dedicated road, leads directly onto the A50 at junction 24 of the M1. The closest residential areas to the proposed extension area are at Sawley Marina and Red Hill Marina to the northwest and east respectively. Isolated properties are also located to the west of Warren Lane, the closest of which, Grounds Farm Cottages, are 25 metres from the application site boundary. The village of Lockington is 1.1 kilometre to the southwest beyond the M1 motorway. This slide identifies some of the main environmental constraints both in and close to the application site. Lockington Marshes, a site of special scientific interest, is adjacent to the northeast and southeast application site boundaries. So this is the northern limb here, and this is the southern limb there. Lockington Fen Candidate Local Wildlife Site is in the application site, but outside the proposed extraction areas. And that is this sort of curving shape down here. Warren Lane Hedge Potential Local Wildlife Site runs along the west boundary of the site. So you can see it's there. And Ratcliffe Stream and Pasture Potential Local Wildlife Site is adjacent to the southeastern boundary of the site, which is marked by this hatched area here. Scheduled Monument, moated site southeast of Sawley Locks, is in the northwest corner of the application site, although outside the proposed extraction area. So you can see that just at the top here. Scheduled Monument, site revealed by aerial photography southeast of Dunster Barn and Roman Villa and enclosures north of Ratcliffe Lane, are adjacent to one another immediately to the south of the application site boundary. There. Beyond this, to the east of the River Saw in Nottinghamshire, is Scheduled Monument Roman Site on Red Hill, which is just there. This slide provides an aerial view of the existing quarry site and proposed extension area in its wider landscape setting. The site is bordered by agricultural land to the north and to the east. The River Trent is to the north and the River Saw is to the east. Beyond this, within Nottinghamshire, are East Midlands Parkway Station, the Midland Main Line and Ratcliffe-on-Saw Power Station. Also on this view are Sawley Marina to the northwest, and to the east, beyond the River Saw, the moorings, businesses and dwellings which make up the community at Red Hill Marina. And that's just here. This slide illustrates in closer detail and aerial imagery the existing plant site, which encompasses the quarry processing plant, which is sort of in this bit here, ready mix concrete plant, which is in this area, bagging plant, which sits in the south of the site, and the waste aggregate recycling area, which is in this area. Also visible are the existing freshwater and silt lagoons, which are proposed to be retained for use in connection with the development. These are in this area. This slide provides a few views of the existing quarry plant and infrastructure, which are proposed to be retained. The image on the top left provides a view of the plant site looking north from the dedicated quarry site access road. Visible are the quarry processing plant and mineral stockpile areas, the ready mix concrete plant, quarry offices and weighbridge. The image on the top right is of the silt and freshwater lagoons, which are to be retained looking east from the quarry access road. The bottom image is of the quarry exit road looking southeast from the quarry access road, and also shown is footpath L73, which runs adjacent to the quarry exit road at this point. This slide provides some views of the proposed northern extension area. The top image is taken from the western site boundary at the point where the proposed Hall Road conveyor corridor meets the northern extension area. Warren Lane is on the far left of the image, while public bridleway L60 is the trackway in the centre. The bottom image is taken from the northwestern corner of the application site, looking southeast. Warren Lane is on the right-hand side, and a railway embankment and associated maintenance trackway are on the left. And in both instances, visually, whilst not all of the site would be active at one time, the extent of those photographs show the extent and width of the proposed northern extension area. The planning application seeks permission for a northern extension to Lockington Quarry onto land northeast of the existing plant site and north of the eastern extension area. The proposed extension would release around 3.3 million tonnes of sand and gravel reserves, which would be sufficient to sustain operations at Lockington Quarry for a further 15 years of production. As such, it is sought to extend the life of the existing plant site and ancillary operations beyond the current expiry date of the 2nd of December 2025 for a further 15 years following the commencement of operations in the northern extension area, with final land restoration to be completed within 1 year of that date. This slide shows the area of the proposed northern extension area with the proposed extraction area marked out in a hatched orange line. So if you can see, there's several orange hatch lines. It also shows the proposal can be summarised as comprising 3 board stages: the preliminary pre-extraction stage, the operational stage, and the restoration stage. During the pre-extraction stage, soils would be stripped from phase 1, which is here. Soils would also be stripped from phase 6, which is this little area here, and along the proposed conveyor haul route corridor, so down here, to enable the construction and installation of the conveyor and its associated hopper. Other works undertaken during this initial stage include the construction of the Warren Lane crossing point and the relocation of the existing conveyor bridge to a location further north along Warren Lane. These works would include the clearance of vegetation, including hedgerows along both sides of Warren Lane. Also proposed to be undertaken at this stage are the construction of acoustic bunds within the Hall Road and conveyor corridor, the creation of a standoff to Lockington Marshes SSI, and another standoff to Scheduled Monument moated site southeast of Storley Locks, and the creation of 3 shallow water bodies and associated recharge trenches within the SSI standoff. The standoff to the SSI is shown on this plan as the green hatched area, which is actually really hard to see, but it runs along here and then down here. The stand-off would have an average width of 100 metres, but would increase to as much as 175 metres during the working of phase 4. The operational stage of the development would include mineral extraction, mineral processing and the export of mineral from the northern extension area for processing prior to final export from site. Processed mineral would be exported from site by road using the existing quarry exit. The northern extension would be progressively worked and restored over 6 main phases, working in a clockwise direction. This slide illustrates the proposed phasing and direction of working. So you can see working, progressing from between phase 3 to phase 3, phase 4, phase 5, phase 6, and then the final restoration operations. During the operational stage, works would also include the diversion of a section of Bridleway L60 so as to allow working in phase 3, which the Bridleway currently crosses. It is proposed that the temporary diversion would remain in place for the duration of the development, after which the Bridleway would be retained along its current alignment. It is also proposed that the diversion route would be retained as a permissive route following the restoration of the site. It should be noted that any planning permission would not give the applicant approval to divert the public bridleway, and this would need to be the subject of a separate approval from the local highway authority. Mineral would be extracted using a 360-degree excavator and would then be transported from the working area by dump truck to the feed hopper and conveyor, which is located in phase 6. The conveyor would transport the as-dug mineral directly to the plant site for processing. Dewatering of those phases in the eastern half of the site, so phases 2, 3, 4 and 5, would be required during mineral extraction and restoration. Approximately 3 million tonnes of inert infill materials would be imported to site during the operational stage for use in restoration operations. The inert materials would be brought to site and initially placed in a waste reception area north of the processing plant before being taken into the northern extension area for direct placement in the extraction voids. As a note, it is confirmed that there are no proposals to use pulverised fuel ash, PFA, as an infill material as part of this development. It is not proposed to increase current consented rates of extraction or infilling, and it is not anticipated that HGV movements would increase over and above the existing. There would, however, be a continuation of existing HGV movements to and from the site for an additional period of 15 years. These and all other potential impacts upon the highway have been assessed in full as part of the application and considered within the assessment of the proposal section of the report. This drawing illustrates the proposed restoration scheme of the northern extension area. Restoration would be to a mix of high quality agriculture and nature conservation. So just so you're aware, these yellowy areas in the western half of the site and in the Hall Road corridor are the areas proposed to be restored to agriculture. And these greener areas close to Lockington Marshes SSSI are the areas to be restored to nature conservation. There would not be a significant loss of best and most versatile agricultural land, and the scheme would also enhance existing habitats around the SSSI, including increased habitat connectivity. The site is approximately 3 kilometres east of East Midlands Airport, and the restoration scheme has had regard to aviation safety, including the need for bird hazard management. The restored land would also be subject to appropriate periods of aftercare. These would be 5 years for those parts of the site to be restored to agriculture and an extended period of 15 years for the land which is to be restored for nature conservation. This slide sets out the policy context for assessing the proposals for sand and gravel. Paragraph 226 of the National Planning Policy Framework requires mineral planning authorities to plan for a steady and adequate supply of aggregates by maintaining a land bank of at least 7 years for sand and gravel. The same paragraph also requires authorities to prepare an annual local aggregate assessment to forecast future demand based on a rolling average of 10 years sales data and other relevant information. Policy M1 of the Leicestershire Minerals and Waste Local Plan seeks to ensure the steady and adequate supply of sand and gravel for aggregate purposes over the plan period by making provision for 19 million tonnes of sand and gravel over the plan period, which was originally 2019 to 2031. Secondly, by maintaining a land bank of at least 7 years based on the previous 10 years average sales. And 3, by giving priority to proposals for extraction to be worked as extensions to existing site operations. Leicestershire's local aggregate assessment was published in November 2024 and is based on 2023 figures. It sets out that at the end of 2023, there were only 2 active sand and gravel quarries in the county, which together provide an estimated 2.99 million tonnes of permitted reserves. The local aggregate assessment identifies a total requirement of 8.08 million tonnes of sand and gravel for the remaining plan period, e.g. 2023 to 2031, and indicated a shortfall of 5.09 million tonnes of permitted sand and gravel over the same period. Policy M3, sand and gravel extraction and allocated areas, is supportive of extraction for proposals for sand and gravel extraction outside allocated areas, provided that the proposal is either an extension to an existing permitted sand and gravel site that is required to main production from that site or is required to meet an identified shortfall in the land bank, or is for a new quarry that is required to replace an existing permitted sand and gravel site that is nearing exhaustion, or would offer significant environmental benefits as a result of the exchange or surrender of existing permissions, or be more acceptable overall than the allocated sites. Because the proposal is an extension to an existing site, only subparagraph 1 of policy M3 is relevant in this instance. The proposed northern extension would deliver 3.3 million tonnes of sand and gravel, which would make a significant contribution to making up the shortfall in Leicestershire's land bank. The proposed extension would also enable extraction operations to continue at Lockington Quarry following the exhaustion of reserves in the eastern extension area. The proposal would therefore comply with the requirements of policies M1 and M3 of the Leicestershire Minerals and Waste Local Plan and the requirements of the MPPF. In conclusion, and based on the assessment set out in the report, great weight is given to the benefits of mineral extraction, including to the economy. The northern extension would assist in making a significant contribution towards Leicestershire's existing shortfall in the supply of sand and gravel, and would accord with the requirements of policies M1 and M3 of the Leicestershire's Minerals and Waste Local Plan in this respect. Environmental and amenity-based impacts associated with the proposal have been considered, including the potential for cumulative impacts. Key environmental issues in respect of this proposal relate to the potential effects of dewatering on groundwater levels and the implications that this may have in respect of flood risk, impacts to Lockington Marshes SSSI and the scheduled monuments. It has been demonstrated that such impacts would be capable of being controlled via condition. Amenity impacts associated with the continued operation of the plant site and the proposed northern extension area have also been assessed and found to be acceptable subject to appropriate conditions. These would ensure the protection of the natural and heritage environment as well as residential and local amenity. Representations have been received from 3 individuals raising concerns and objections to the scheme. Concerns largely relate to impacts to health and well-being as a result of changes to the public right-of-way network, as well as amenity impacts associated with noise and dust. These impacts have been considered in full in the assessment of proposal section of the report and are capable of being controlled by condition. The development has the potential to result in harm to scheduled monuments, which are designated heritage assets of the highest significance. Great weight is given to the conservation of those assets. The harm is considered to be less than substantial and would predominantly arise through impacts to the significance of those scheduled monuments through their setting. Where proposals result in less than substantial harm, the MPPF includes a requirement to balance this harm against any public benefit which may accrue from the development. In this instance, it is concluded that public benefit would arise through the ongoing supply of sand and gravel aggregate, which would make up a significant proportion of the current shortfall of supply within the county. It is further noted that any harm would largely be temporary and reversible upon restoration, ultimately allowing the scheduled monuments to be read and understood within their wider landscape setting. The development would accord with the requirements of Policy DM8 of the Leicestershire Minerals and Waste Local Plan and Policy HE1 of the North West Leicestershire Local Plan in this respect. In terms of sustainability, the development accords with Policy DM1 of the Leicestershire Minerals and Waste Local Plan, Policies D1 and D2 of the North West Leicestershire Local Plan, and paragraph 11 of the NPPF. The recommendation is to permit, subject to the conditions set out in Appendix A of the report and the prior completion of a legal agreement to secure provisions for a liaison committee and a permissive bridleway. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. There are no speakers on this application. I believe Mr. Coxon, you had your hand up first.
Yes, Chairman. I'd like to know if we received any communication from Councillor Pendleton, Chairman. It is his area, and I wonder if there'd be any comments.
Yes, we did. Councillor Mr. Pendleton actually raised the question about the use of pulverised fuel ash as a restoration medium, and I was able to go back to the applicant and confirm that there's no intention for it to be used. It's only inert wastes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. In that case, Chairman, I'll move the recommendation on page 272, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Coxon. Noted. Mr. Allen.
Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, 2 points for clarification, if I can, please. So the first one, the restoration, will that be phased as well? So, for example, when they're doing phase 2, would they have to restore phase 1 before moving on to phase 3? And the second one, there's obviously significant archaeological interest in the area with Roman remains there. Will there be a sort of full and comprehensive archaeological survey before any works begin? Thank you, Chair.
So, yeah, in answer to the first question, yes, the idea would be that once mineral extraction had been completed in one void, then the overburden from the succeeding void would then be placed directly in that previous extraction void. So the idea would be that actually you'd never have the whole site open at one time. It's not like a hard rock quarry. It would be sort of restored progressively as it went around. In answer to the second question, yes, there is archaeology there. In terms of impacts associated with the scheduled monuments, there is a detailed scheme of protection associated with the potential impacts associated with dewatering. There is also, which is recommended to be controlled via condition. With regard to scheduled monument protection of moated site to the southeast of Sawley Lock, there is a specific condition that includes the erection of 2 fences and ongoing monitoring of that site to prevent incursion of the scheduled monument by quarry plant and vehicles. Within the actual working area of the site, there is a comprehensive written scheme of investigation that has been approved by both Historic England and Richard Clark, the county archaeologist.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just to confirm, anything of interest that's not currently known will be identified and logged. Okay. Yeah. Happy to second the motion, Chair.
Noted. Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Lovegrove.
Thank you, Chairman. Very comprehensive and detailed report, as you'd probably expect, but excellent report. Thank you very much. It's easy for this committee to give approval and then struggle to backpedal afterwards. The things we've faced before are impacts on the environment, noise and dust, and impacts on the road network. And I did hear in the report and read about there had been no increase in HGV usage, but I think we've seen time and time again here that it's always good to, I think you use the phrase capable of conditions. I would like to see probably conditions in place to ensure that there is no excess dust or noise or an increase in HGV vehicles, and they're monitored by the county council to make sure they're not exceeded. Because once we say yes, if we do, it's hard to pedal backwards and put down laws and conditions after we said yes. Thank you, Chairman.
Victoria, do you want to come back on that?
Yep, so there are comprehensive schedule of conditions. Conditions 28 to 35 relate to controls over the highway. Conditions 36 to 41 relate to conditions relating to noise, including the requirement for a submission of a noise management and monitoring scheme. There is also a condition that sets maximum limits for different types of operations at all times. And conditions 42 to 45 relate to issues to control the impacts of dust.
Thank you. Just to confirm, in your presentation, you said capable of conditions. You're referring to conditions that will be as part of the application.
Absolutely. There are conditions recommended.
Thank you.
Does that satisfy your inquiry, Mr. Lovegrove? Okay, Mr. Bannister.
I believe Mr. Merry was before me. Chair.
Mr. Merry.
Gentlemen.
Mr. Bannister.
Well, I'm grateful to Mr. Merry. I think the most telling comment through this comprehensive and very good presentation from Victoria was the fact that we only have 2 active sand and gravel sites at the moment. We have a shortfall of 5.09 million tonnes of sand and gravel. This will deliver 3.3. We will still have a shortfall, notwithstanding this quarry being extended in the way in which it is proposed. And we need to take note of having to give great weight to the benefits of mineral extraction under the NPPF. Yes, I do have concerns about the potential impacts on the Lockington March SSSI and the heritage asset, but we have to balance that potential harm against the significant public benefit. So I am in favour of the recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bannister. Mr. Merry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Firstly, thank you. A very comprehensive report, both written and verbal today. And like my colleague sat to my left, I'm a big believer in, if you want to be environmentally friendly, we all want growth and in the area and more jobs, and that involves building. And then we should get the aggregates from as close to where the building is going to be taking place. And we shouldn't be shipping it in by boat, rail, truck, whatever. But unfortunately, we're still going to have a shortfall. But my concern is, and it was raised in the summary slide up on the screen, and it's in the summary on page 226, paragraph 298, says the development has the potential to result in harm to scheduled monuments which are designated heritage assets of the highest significance. And then it says basically you can obviously hopefully prevent this through a series of mitigation measures, a buffer zone and hydrological monitoring. But I couldn't find anything in the report to say who would fix it if it goes wrong. I can't find it in the report. So if there's going to be a condition set to say you've got to monitor this and make sure you don't damage the scheduled monuments. So can I ask the officers who's going to fix it if it goes wrong?
Victoria.
Okay, so there are a number of conditions relating to these issues. Condition 50. So condition 49, specifically with regard to the impacts of dewatering on the scheduled monuments as a result of drawdown. Condition 49 includes a requirement for a detailed water management action plan, and we are recommending that we have the submission of this detailed document, which should also include provision for a programme of water level monitoring to assess the effects of the development on not only the Lockington Marshes SSSI, but also the scheduled monument moated site to the southeast of Sawley Lock. That scheme is also proposed there's a report, an annual report required as a result of that condition that would be submitted to not only the Mineral Planning Authority, but to Natural England and to Historic England. I would say that Historic England has withdrawn their objection to the proposal on the basis that that water management action plan would be taking place. In terms of physical protection of the scheduled monument moated site to the southeast of Sawley Lock, there is a specific condition requiring the detailed information about the protection of that scheduled monument, which, as I mentioned in the report, it would include the erection of 2 fences at 10 and 20 metres from the defined edge of the scheduled monument. It would also include details of the construction installation of that fencing, a monitoring scheme to be undertaken during mineral extraction, which would have regard to the condition of the fencing, any vegetation that might be sort of growing up in an area that's not being disturbed by livestock, etc. A programme of reporting associated with that. Just in terms of other archaeology, as I said, there is already a written scheme of investigation which has been approved by Historic England and the county archaeologist.
Thanks for the... Sorry, we put the conditions in place and they're great conditions, but things do go wrong. So if it goes wrong, who's going to put it right? Thank you.
So specifically with regard to the water management action plan, there's a requirement for those and also the specific condition relating to the scheduled monument. The reason that the reports would be submitted to Historic England as well as Natural England and ourselves is that actually we would be able to, all parties would be able to see whether there was any likely impact or potential damage. The water management action plan actually includes a series of tiered actions based on intensive water monitoring undertaken in and around the site. That would basically the first. So the first tier would be routine operation and practice. The second tier would be actions in response to monitoring results indicated that there'd been a potential change in terms of groundwater levels. And the third tier would be contingency actions intended to be undertaken if parties thought that there was something, either the scheduled monument or the SSSI were at significant risk of damage.
I think I'm going to bring Julie in because I think the specific question you're asking, Mr. Merry, has not yet been addressed, which is who pays the bill to put things right?
Well, we could serve breach of condition notice on if they breach any of the conditions. We could take enforcement action against the site owners if they didn't comply with what they should have complied with. And in both instances, we would require the site owner to remedy and pay the costs. English Heritage and the other historical bodies also have their own powers to enforce. So it depends what goes wrong where as to who the leading body would be. But I think we've put in place as many safeguards as we possibly can at this stage. And hopefully it's a reputable company that's doing it. They know what they're dealing with, they know what's there. I would hope we wouldn't have any problems down the line, but there are a number of remedies if we do.
You're satisfied now, Mr. Merry? Thank you. Mr. Charlesworth.
Mr. Merry, I'm far from satisfied with the answer there because I don't think we've had an answer there. I've sat on this board on and off for 20 years now, and I understand the importance of sand and gravel and aggregates within the county of Leicestershire and the importance of them. No question about that. You know, we practically build the southeast from Leicestershire. But getting to that particular point Mr. Merry raised, the Lockington and the historic sites, when dewatering takes place, depending on how quickly it's rectified, the damage will be irreparable. And by the time enforcement action or something else is taken place, it'll be too late. The damage will have been done. And some of these things can't be repaired. So it's all very well saying, well, we've got this in place and we've got a condition that'll get somebody to come in a few weeks after when we monitor this and monitor that. it'll be too late. And I have to take issue with Victoria's comment about Historic England. They did submit an objection originally. They withdrew it, but, and I quote paragraph 136 here, Historic England welcomed these mitigation strategies and they do not change our ultimate position on harm. Why they still withdrew their objection on that basis seems ridiculous to me. They objected, there's mitigation measures, but it doesn't change the outcome for them. How can they withdraw their objection? I find that absurd. Sorry to be a bit of a rant, but...
Is any officer wish to come back, Victoria?
Yeah. In that instance, whilst the harm in that instance is about harm to the significance of the scheduled monument via their setting, so rather than direct impacts to the scheduled monuments through dewatering. So there were two dual issues, the controls and the conditions that I've just discussed deal with the direct physical impacts to the scheduled monument. The harm to the significance via setting is about the works being undertaken in the land that sits between, particularly the scheduled monuments, which are of Bronze Age Roman age, and it's about how they sit in their landscape setting, and that is when they're referring to the harm.
Can I just... So just to add to that, the harm that Historic England have identified to the setting, which is the changing of the landscape context in which those heritage assets are read, is temporary and it's reversible. So it's temporary in that the harm to the landscape will last for 15 years over the course of the mineral extraction and would be reversed once the restoration scheme is in place. So the harm that Historic England are talking about in that sense, the setting harm, is temporary and reversible, whereas the physical damage that could be caused to the scheduled ancient monuments through dewatering or plant and machinery traipsing over them, that's what the conditions and the mitigation measures are in place for. So that physical harm is not something that Historic England, they are satisfied with the conditions to put the protection measures in place to protect the physical harm to the scheduled ancient monuments.
Okay, any further questions from members? Okay, so the officer's recommendation is to permit, subject to conditions and completion of section 106 of the legal agreement, to approve application 2019/2358/07. There is a proposer and a seconder. Can I take a vote, please? All those in favour? Okay. All those against? Which will mean no abstentions. So the application is permitted, subject to conditions set out in section 106 agreement. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, members. The application is approved. So thank you, members. Good debate. And we now move on to agenda item 9, county council application. So I'm very pleased that as we started out this journey, that all county council applications will come before this committee. This is application 2025 section 106A /0008/LCC, Leicestershire County Council section 106A application to modify section 106 agreement in relation to obligations relating to education, New Lubbock Primary School, Tay Road, Leicester. It's in your agenda pack as pages 263 to 290, and Mark Johnson, Team Manager, Planning Obligations Systems, will take the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so you beat me to my opener, thank you. So yes, this is an application made under section 106A of the Town and Country Planning Act. It's to modify the obligations that relate to the delivery of school places, which is included in the original section 106 agreement for the planning application at the New Lubbock Sustainable Urban Extension, or SUE. And we're talking in particular about the New Lubbock Primary School. It's not like other applications which have been presented to this board, where the decision that you've been asked to make is on the principle of the development itself. The principle of the development itself has already been established by Blaby District Council. The decision here that I'm asking is whether or not the application, which is set out in Appendix A and B, are legally compliant or not. And on that basis, there are no options or opportunities to suggest further modifications or conditions to what the applicant has presented. The decision is essentially whether to replace the existing 6th schedule, which is Appendix A, with the proposed 6th schedule, which is Appendix B, in its entirety. So the new Lubbersthorpe site lies immediately to the north of Leicester Lane and Enderby, which is to the west of the M1, and to the south of Forest House Lane, which is in Leicester Forest East. The western boundary adjoins Beggars Lane for much of its length, the curtilage of Enderby Hall, the former landfill site at Enderby Warrens, and the Warren Parkway Industrial Estate. The site is subdivided by the M69. Background on the actual planning permission that was granted by Blaby District Council in 2014 under their planning application reference 11/0100/1/OX. And the part of the description of the application sought permission to accommodate 2 primary schools, a secondary school, and associated playing fields and children's nursery facilities and other amenities. New Lubbersthorpe Primary School is the first of those primary schools, and that opened in 2019. So that's centrally located within the site, which is currently at around 1,000 occupations with planning permission in place to build up to 4,250. Page 3 of the report shows the site plan. The outline shown in green is the existing primary school boundary, and that's already been transferred to the County Council when the school opened. And the proposed extension to that primary school is outlined in blue, and that lands under the applicant's control. As part of the original planning application, the County Council entered into a Section 106 agreement with Blaby District Council, the applicant, the developers and planning agents and the owners of the land in January 2014. Now, I know obviously members of this group are familiar with what Section 106 agreements are, but for those that aren't familiar, the purpose of a 106 agreement, a Section 106 agreement, is to mitigate the impact of a development on local community and infrastructure. The Section 106 agreement sets out schedules which explain the terms that bind the owners or developer to provide, facilitate or fund the provision of infrastructure, services or other measures that may be needed to mitigate the impact of the development in planning terms. We'll call them obligations. And Section 106A of the Town and Country Planning Act enables the modification or discharge of those obligations to be achieved either in agreement with or by application to the planning authority by whom the planning obligation is enforceable. So in this instance, we're talking about the obligations that relate to education and that they're enforceable by the County Council, and that's obviously why I'm here today. There have been 2 modifications that relate to obligations enforceable by Blaby District Council, and they were made by agreement rather than by application. So again, and I think I'm going to stress this a couple of times during my presentation, there's no opportunity to negotiate or vary the applicant's proposal that I'm putting towards you today. It's whether we accept it or not. So the initial change to the schedule impacts Primary School 1. So that's the existing primary school, as well as the size and location of the second primary school and the size and the land requirements of the secondary school. And I'll get to those in a moment. The application here that's presented to this board is effectively an enabler to the extension of the current primary school, and Blaby District Council have an application with them, a reserve matters application for that, which they're going to determine after we've made our decision here. And obviously, they'll be the determining authority for any future applications that relate to the second primary school or the secondary school. If I can take members back to 2011, if you'll allow me, when the County Council made its recommendation to Blaby District Council around how we would like the primary education provision to be mitigated, we asked for contributions towards a maximum of 1,050 primary school places. They will be spread across 2 schools. So 2 forms of entry at Primary School 1, that's the school that's open now, that's 420 pupil places, and up to 3 forms of entry at Primary School 2, so that's up to 630 places. And a review mechanism was established to assess the provision and the delivery of those places for the second primary school after the construction of primary school 1. So we've already done that review, and we've agreed that all 1,050 primary school places are required. So the amendment to the 6th schedule sets out a proposal to effectively switch the provision of those places around, as well as move the second primary school. So that means if this application is permitted, the Section 106 agreement will be amended, that 6th schedule, to reflect that primary school 1 will deliver 630 places and not 420. And primary school 2 will deliver 420 places confirmed and not up to 630. So again, we're not talking about the actual application to deliver the schools, it's just the amendment to the schedule. Obviously, because we are looking here at an extension to primary school 1, there's an additional land requirement, and that's shown in the plan. And we're satisfied, or officers in the school organisation service are satisfied, that that land is sufficient to build that extension. And obviously, with the bigger primary school 1, primary school 2 can be made smaller, which means that it can also be resited. So I think there are plans there to resite primary school 2 adjacent to the secondary school. The land requirements are all in line with the Department for Education's Build Bulletin 103. So from a land requirement, we're satisfied there. Obviously, again, with the proposal to extend primary school 1, the delivery for primary school 2 can be pushed back. So currently the development's at 1,000 occupations, and the review set out originally that we would look to make a decision on the second primary school before 1,200 occupations, and that's proposed to be pushed back now to 2,000 dwellings, so the occupation of 2,000 dwellings. Obviously, the rationale being the extension to the primary school will provide that additional buffer. And then the secondary school, again, in our original 2011 response, we'd asked for a range between 800 and 930 pupil places, and the schedule sets out that that's now confirmed at 930 secondary pupil places, and a confirmed land requirement of 8 hectares. Again, that's set out in Appendix B, and likewise with pushing back the delivery of the secondary school as well, and that's being pushed back, or proposed to be pushed back, to the occupation of 1,400 dwellings and not 1,200, or if the applicant won't elect to build the school themselves, like they've built the first primary school, then they must inform us at the occupation, or before the occupation, of 1,400 dwellings and not 1,000, as it was originally proposed. In terms of representations, site notices were displayed in the vicinity of primary school 1, and we had an email of objection from a resident concerning inappropriate parking and speeding along Tay Road, which is where primary school 1 is located. And the local member for New Lubbersthorpe was consulted, and they also raised concerns about parking and highway safety. Those concerns are addressed, and I'll get to those in the assessment of the proposal, but it should be noted that in consultation with the Highway Authority, there were no objections raised by them. And finally, in discussion with officers at Blaby District Council, there's some queries about the difference in land allocations for the schools referenced in the original planning permission, the Section 106 and the proposed amended 6th schedule. And whilst current officers can't really explain those differences, what we can confirm is that we're satisfied with the land requirements as set out in Appendix B, and they're satisfactory as far as we're concerned. Turning now to Section 106A, so it's an application to modify the planning obligation. Where an application to modify an obligation under Section 106 is lodged, the decision effectively is either that the planning obligation shall continue to have effect without modification, so it stays as it is. If the planning obligation no longer serves a useful purpose, then it'll be discharged, so struck out. Or C, as is the case here, if the obligation continues to serve a useful purpose, but will serve that purpose equally well if it had had effect subject to the modifications specified in the application, then it shall have effect subject to those modifications. In simple terms, the existing obligation is replaced with the proposed obligation from the date of approval if it's made. I hope that makes sense to everybody. So moving then in turn now to the assessment of the proposal, some background context here. since the original consultation was received from Blaby District Council in 2011, there's been a number of changes. So most notably, the primary pupil yield figures have increased. So that's the number that we use to calculate the number of primary school places yielded from a development. That used to be 24 primary school places per 100 dwellings, and that's now increased to 30 per 100 dwellings. So the demand is more. So obviously that means that the demand for primary school places will be realised in September 2026, which is a lot earlier than we'd anticipated. Obviously, there's been a significant increase in build costs as well, and for this particular matter, the applicant's proposing to construct the extension. So clearly that means that the financial burden is taken off the county council. And if this application would not have been received, or if it's not approved, then the demand for primary school places that can't be allocated or accommodated at primary school 1 will obviously result in pupils having to move and go to schools outside of the area. So that might make transport and highways issues worse in the surrounding area. And obviously, from a county council perspective, if we choose to provide school transport, that's in the range of about £50,000 per 50 pupils. So there's a financial implication on the county council as well. And clearly, as it won't be a surprise to members here, not approving the application invokes the applicant's right to appeal, and that's under section 106B. So the original section 106, if I can remind you, provided the delivery of 1,050 school places, split 420 places at primary school 1 and 630 as part of primary school 2. And effectively that's switched around. So primary school 1 will now deliver 630 places if the application is approved, and primary school 2 will deliver up to 420 places later on in the development on a smaller site. And again, the pupil places are needed for September 2026. So the application is favourable to both the county council and to the local residents. And again, with the secondary school, it's a commitment now to deliver in a secondary school of up to, of a maximum of 930 places rather than a range on a bigger site. I mentioned earlier about the objection and the concerns raised about the impact of additional traffic along Tay Road, the parking issues and careless driving, which have been raised by both a local member and a resident. And that's taken in context, obviously, of the additional number of pupils that will be attending the school site should the application be permitted. Now, the agreement, the existing Section 106 agreement contains a highway delivery review strategy. So that has already taken place, taken place at the occupation of 1,000 dwellings, and a subsequent highway delivery review strategy is undertaken at the occupation of 500 dwellings as the development progresses. So although the Highway Authority hasn't raised any concerns as part of this application or in the highway delivery review strategy that's already taken place, because there's a mechanism by which to address any traffic calming issues as they arise, we're satisfied that that will be picked up if there are any additional safety concerns. And so it's on that basis that I am recommending that committee resolve to allow the application to vary the obligations so that the obligations are set out in the 6th schedule are switched out from those shown as Appendix A to those included as Appendix B. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. There are no speakers. Open the floor to members. Mr. Lovegrove.
Excellent presentation. Thank you very much. Endorse everything you've said. Just picking up on the concern about the parking outside the school and excessive speeds by the school. Councillor next to me said that's in every primary school in the county. If there is going to be some extra development on site, is there extra provision for off-road pick-up and drop-off for parents, please? Thank you.
So there already is like a drop-off zone along Tay Road, and that's not proposed to be extended. But obviously, as part of the extension to the school site, there are additional car parking places provided there and a bigger turning circle provided. So I don't think that directly addresses the concerns, but the highway delivery review strategy is the mechanism by which those highway safety grounds will be picked up.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Very quickly, if it's been identified as an issue, if there could be extra space for pick up and drop off, even thinking what you've just said, I think that should be taken into consideration. It's a bugbear with all primary schools, and if it can be done during a development stage, it's much easier to put in place. But I know plans sometimes are ahead of decision-making process, but if it can be looked at.
Google Maps.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's just to say, obviously, that really is more to do with the determination of the application by Blaby to actually extend the school rather than the application presented. But obviously, I take the points that you've made.
And we are a consultee to the Blaby planning application, so we can put our comments forward then as Highway Authority.
And I think, if I may, Mr. Lovegrove, I'm just going to pass my laptop round because there's a very nice image of that pull-in and drop-off area. Mr. Mayor, I think you had your...
Yes, Chair, thank you. I'd just like to obviously comment. I've seen the drop-off area. It's very similar to the one in Ellistown New School, and it's like an alternate landing strip for the space shuttle. The county council really do take a lot of time now to make sure that coaches can turn around safely and all the rest of it. But I'd like to move the recommendation, Chair.
Mr. Bannister.
Thank you. On the planning application, the original application which was approved, I'm sure there was a great deal of thought about the provision of PS1 and PS2, and the applicants restricted the size. They wanted PS1 to be the smaller of the two primary schools. They've now built it, and if we do approve this and it comes to pass that there will be an extension built, there'll clearly be disruption to an existing built site where there are young school children. I'm just really curious as to the reason why the developers have switched their desire to have PS1 as the bigger of the two primary schools, bearing in mind it's already built and the disruption that will come, as opposed to building it out as originally planned at PS2. It's a question I'm just curious to know the answer to.
Julie?
Shiny new schools sell houses. Simple as that. And I hear what you're saying about disruption to children in an existing school, but our strategy is throughout the county to extend existing schools where possible, and then build new ones. So it doesn't alter the total number of pupil places. We're just getting them a bit earlier, which, as I say, we need them by September 26. So it is helping us.
I think members,
Thank you.
Ewan's very kindly just put a map view up for you. So the school's actually to the left. If Ewan can scroll around a little bit. That's the slip road just there. There's pick up and drop off, and then if Ewan goes to the left.
Can't recall if we've got a seconder for the Mr. Mary's proposer. If not, I'll second.
Thank you. Any other members' questions? Mr. Allen.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just coming back on my colleague's comment. So when we get close to the 2000 number, I've not seen a map showing how big this site is. Is there the potential that they might want to come back and extend primary school 1 again and delay primary school 2 further? Or is that 2000 a hard point in the sign and they've got to do it at that point?
Julie?
It will be included in the agreement, but it's a big site. I mean, we've heard 4,250 units. You don't want both of your primary schools in the same place because you're going to have residents having to walk quite a long way to drop the kids off. So I think we will get 2 separate schools and separate locations because that's a better form of urban development. And if they are going to put it next to the secondary school, that's even more attractive for children, well, families who have children of various ages at school because you've got 1 drop off and 1 pick up.
So,
yeah, thank you. Thanks for that. Can we ask for some more of the camera casting around the schools, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I would second that, but actually Tay Road's got quite a lot of road calming measures on it. I certainly wouldn't want to drive quickly up that road myself. So any other questions from members? Mr. Coxon.
Well, just to say, Chairman, that, like Mr. Lovegrove, I thought the presentation was very good. And I think really it would be unreasonable of us not to go with this recommendation, Chairman. And so I will be voting in favour, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Coxon. Okay, any further questions from members? The officer's recommendation is to approve the amendment to the section 106 under section 106A. We have a proposal, we have a seconder. Can we take the vote, please? All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, members. You may communicate the change to the applicant. Thank you very much, Mark, and thank you very comprehensive, very clear presentation. And I hope you enjoyed
Chair.
Time at DCRB. Sorry, Mr. Merritt.
Have you closed the meeting?
Oh,
I just wanted to say a big thank you to all the officers and everything for my time on this committee. Been very helpful. It's my last meeting and I'm stepping down as a county councillor. So thank you and keep up the great work.
Thank you, Mr. Merritt. That's very generous of you. Okay, so agenda item 10 is any other items which the chairman has decided to take as urgent. As I said earlier, there are no urgent items. Agenda item 11 is the chairman's announcement. The next meeting is after the election, which will be the 12th of June 2025 at 2 p.m. and at 15:45 we close the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Good luck in the elections for those who are standing. And yes.